If you're looking to fill some more space on your island, I might just have the perfect idea for you. Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. I was recently planning my new island and therefore thinking about what type of areas I wanted to include, and it actually made me realize that there's a couple of ideas I always seem to gravitate towards. But not only that, those areas also tend to be my favorite on my finished islands. I don't think any of these are necessarily groundbreaking, but sometimes it can help to just hear and see things in a list with a couple of different options. So here are some absolute must-have areas for your island. Number 1, a land bridge. Listen, we have quite a few buildings that need to be connected on our islands. We've got the shops, the museum, the houses, and so on. So we need to get from A to B, like many times in many different ways. Safe to say it might get boring with a regular path. The answer to that, a land bridge. Essentially, it's just a type of path made more interesting with a bit of land or waterscaping on the sides and some pathing, aka codes, and of course items. I've actually done several versions of this and I don't think I will ever grow tired of them, to be honest. The first version that I built, I guess could be considered the classic, and it just connects two cliffs with a straight across bridge, and there is water flowing on both sides to actually bring that bridge image across. In this case, there actually was some waterscaping on both sides and a few waterfalls in the back, and as pathing, I decided to put two versions of the in-game pathing in a stripy design with some codes over top. This also works if you put it all on the same level, so the bridge doesn't connect cliffs, but instead it just allows you to make your way across water. I did a few different versions of this in the same style as before, using that stripy pathing and items along the side. By the way, I will put the name of the island where you can find these builds in the top right corner, and in the description box I will link my website with all of my DAs if you want to visit any of those. Instead of making your way across water, I have also built a version of this land bridge on my city core island where it basically allows you to walk across a highway. So there are many different aesthetics that you can build this in as well. And it works equally well if you set it up from left to right, like I did on my fall island here. I put up this bridge completely without any water actually, just to oversee a pumpkin fair in the background and that forest area as well. There's also the option of making these bridges curved. I made a fall themed version of this before where I used some brick pathing, and there were actually farms, like sunken farms, on both sides of the bridge. Alternatively, I've also made a curved land bridge before that was basically just a build like in and of itself. So it didn't connect any land, but rather it was just an elevated version of a path in this kind of witchy rendition that I did to make it all look a bit more dramatic and mysterious. I believe even this canopy walkway can probably be called a land bridge. It's just this one tile wide elevated path using a few designs to make it look like an actual bridge that allows you to make your way through the jungle. I'm not 100% sure this option counts as an actual land bridge, but mentioning it won't hurt, right? So here goes. A one-sided land bridge. This is perfect if you have like a sunken area on one part and are kind of like smushed against the cliff on the other side. I just used a bit of fencing along the sunken side, and I feel like that still gives it that land bridge character, and it's a fun way to get from A to B or connect some land. If you are interested in how I will implement some of these must-have areas on my new island, make sure that you subscribe so you don't miss any of those updates. Number 2, a sunken area. If we talk about land bridges, we inevitably also have to mention sunken areas. These are basically just little sections of our island, filler or themed, that are made more interesting by putting them on a lower level. Let's look at this version on my plant core island, for example. It's just some waterscaping with trees and flowers and a few select items, but it's made infinitely cuter just by being below our path level. And this of course also opens up some fun ways for pathing, as you could include, for example, a little land bridge to get past it, or add on kind of like a balcony feel so that you get a better view of the area. This one on my city core island is built up very similarly by just being a filler area that you walk past. I've also used this method for more themed areas though, like my sunken farm on my fall island. It's a bigger area right next to a land bridge that's supposed to look as though the farm below has kind of been abandoned and forgotten as nature changed over time and maybe that area sunk more into the ground. On my plant core island, I also made a sunk museum, which opened up some more opportunities for me to give that area a nice backdrop of trees and statues, and it really is a nice picture spot if you stand just in front of it. On my Four Seasons island, I also use this method for my own house to give it even more of that witchy vibe, especially with the candles all around it on different levels. Number 3, shops and or restaurants. We obviously have Nook's Cranny and Able Sisters on our island, but let's be honest, they could have given us a few more shop options in this game. So I guess we just have to add them ourselves. I actually always tried to think about what shops I would love IRL, or which ones kind of fit the theme or also the personality of my villagers. My Plancore Island therefore ended up having a few different types of plant shops with a bunch of potted plants and also watering cans or shovels and seed bag items, etc. Kind of like a little gardening shop. On my Let's Play Island, Gala, for example, owns a little flower shop. I've also made extensions of Nook's Cranny before, where I just put up a setup of different items just in front. I've worked on a surf shop just next to it, or a fish market by the beach. I would probably also say that that pumpkin fair that I showed you earlier, as well as an apple cafe with an adjacent orchard, kind of belong in this category as well. And of course, I had a decent amount of little shops on my city island as well, such as this one convenience store with like actual shelves, as well as a car and a yacht repair shop. I even already have plans in this category for some of my work in progress islands as well, like a bakery and cafe for Flurry on the Let's Play Island, or I also want to do a street food festival and a bike rental on my Forever Island. If you know my islands a little bit, you definitely will not be surprised by these next two categories, to be honest. Number 4, let's start with flower fields and farms. Especially since I love to color coordinate, I am obsessed with using flowers to really bring an island vision across. These can truly take on so many forms too. It can be a big meadow filled with flowers, or just a small filler farm with strategically placed flowers and items. Let me show you some of my favorites that I've done. On my Plancore Island, I built up this hyacinth farm on both sides of a path in white, yellow, and orange. And in between the rows of flowers, I added some pathing, and to complete the look, I also included some hyacinth lambs and butterflies in between. On that very same island, I also had this one meadow overview in the same type of color scheme, and I specifically remember this being an area I really did not know how to fill, so this really ended up working out nicely. I even had an island focused like mostly on farms, where of course I built up a few different small flower fields such as lavender or tulips, or also a little bee farm with yellow flowers. And I even did this one entire like color coordinated cliff with a bunch of blue and orange flowers and some darker wood accents. I absolutely love this green and white farm version I once did for Dina, in which I actually used some of the tulip surprise boxes and Cosmo showers, as well as the Festivali lamps to break it all up in between. This might be one of my favorite areas I've ever created, to be honest. And as you might be able to imagine, this was a category I made use of quite often on my Rainbow Island as well. I think my favorite versions on that island were the small pink flower farm with the little windflower fans in between, and that bigger version of a flower farm in yellow with a bunch of bee models and beehives. And while that was also in the shop category, I would once again like to include Gala's little flower shop here as well. And number 5, next to flower farms, let's of course not forget about actual produce farms. I've used them at least just as often. There's of course the typical farm builds with different produce, like this one on my fall themed island, and I have done a very similar one with a few additional items as crops on my Four Seasons island. And there is also this slightly smaller version on my No Terraforming island. I of course also like to color coordinate my farms to fit the theme and villagers, so I did this little cauliflower farm for Flurry before, and for this farm archipelago, I opted to use mostly green and brown produce. This one in particular, I think, again, one of my favorite areas I've ever built just because of the floating islands. It just adds a really nice vibe. My favorite crop overall is probably the pumpkin, so it's not surprising that I've done a few different pumpkin patches as well. This one was part of a lookout for Winnie's house, and then I did a more fall-themed version around my own house as well. I've even done 2 separate entrance versions before, one in a green and white color scheme, and the other one as a typical fall-themed build. Absolutely love this version, especially with the house and those pumpkin items right behind it. And next to some perfectly tended to farms, I've also done some intentionally overgrown ones like these versions on my city core island, kind of as like a forgotten community garden that people just kind of stopped caring for after a while. So all of the weeds are growing wild and items are forgotten. There might even be some trash involved there. And also this version on the fall themed island that I've shown you earlier fits into the forgotten farm category. Do you have any more ideas that you think are an absolute must-have? Let us know about them in the comments below, please. I will also link my speed build playlist for you for some more build inspo. And then thank you all so much for watching today, and I hope that you have an amazing time until I see you in my next video. Bye everyone!